Hello everyone. So in the previous session, we had seen the types of operating systems. In that we have seen general purpose operating systems and real-time operating system. So we have seen the structure of a real-time operating system, what are the different components in that, and what are the features of that. So coming to the next part, we have two categories of real-time operating system based on how it responds with respect to the timing constraints. So we classify the real-time systems into two categories or two types, that is hard real-time and soft real-time. So this classification we have seen many times, yet we will discuss that again with respect to real-time operating systems. So the real-time operating systems which strictly adhere to the timing constraint for the task, they are called hard real-time systems. So in hard real-time systems, real-time operating systems, uh, there cannot be any exception in meeting the deadline. So they must meet the deadlines for a task without any slippage. So there should be no missing the deadlines at all. So missing any deadline may produce catastrophic results for hard real-time systems, including permanent data loss and irrecoverable damages to the system or users. So here the principle is like a late answer is a wrong answer. So if you have answered late, it's like you have not answered at all, or you have answered it wrong. Okay. So very critical examples or very critical applications which require uh, timing, uh, where it is very essential to meet the timing deadlines, like airbag control systems in vehicles, anti-lock brake systems, ABS of vehicles. So these are all examples of hard real-time systems. So if at all there is any delay in the deployment of airbags, the passenger might die in an accident. At that instance, if the airbags do not open up, the passenger or the person driving the vehicle might die. Similarly, in flight control applications, they have to be hard real-time systems, because a little delay might cause huge damage in the property as well as lives of the people. Okay, so here hard real-time means there is no compromise at all with respect to the timing deadlines. So in order to avoid the delay in hard real-time systems, so we do not implement the virtual memory concept. So wherein there is swapping in and swapping out of the code to and from the primary memory to the secondary memory, right? So that takes some time. If the code is stored in secondary memory, from there, if you want to bring it to primary memory, it takes some time. So to avoid that, there is no concept of virtual memory involved here. So directly you will place it in the primary memory itself. Okay. So one more thing is, most of the hard real-time systems are automatic. So there is no human in the loop. So it's called HITL, that is human in the loop. If at all there is intervention of the humans, that is some controlling task, if humans have to do, that takes more time. It adds some unexpected delays. So that's why totally hard real-time systems are totally automatic and there is no presence of human in the loop. Okay, so this enables hard real-time systems to meet the deadlines at all times. The next kind of real-time systems are soft real-time systems. So coming to soft real-time systems, here there can be a little compromise with respect to that meeting the deadlines. Okay, the real-time operating systems that do not guarantee meeting deadlines but offer the best effort to meet the deadline are referred to as soft real-time systems. Here they try to meet the deadlines. They try very hard to meet the deadlines, but there is no guarantee that it will meet the deadlines all the time. Okay, so missing the deadlines for the tasks are acceptable if the frequency of deadline missing is within the compliance limit of the quality of service. So there might be a certain limit fixed, like so many times if you miss the deadline, there is no problem. So if it is within that limit, if you miss the deadline, it's acceptable. Okay. So here the principle is a late answer is an acceptable answer, but it could have done bit faster. Okay. So whereas in hard real time, a late answer is a wrong answer. Here in soft real time, a late answer is acceptable, but it could have been bit faster, right? So here in soft real time systems, most often we have a human in the loop for some control application or for some reason. There will be a human in the loop. For example, a very good example is automatic teller machine or automated teller machine, that is ATM. So wherein the things have to happen in real time. You go to withdraw cash to the ATM, you enter something, right? You are there. There is a human in the loop there. So if the ATM takes a few seconds more than the ideal operation time, nothing fatal happens. That is, the person is not going to die there if the money comes a little late, right? So he can wait for some time. But it has to be real time. He cannot keep waiting there for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It should happen within a 1 minute delay or 30 seconds delay is acceptable in that case, right? Similarly, what we are doing now, this is also an example for real-time system, soft real-time system. That is, we are having a live class, right? So whatever I'm saying now, you're able to listen there. But in between, we have seen there are some network failures. So even that, if that happens, nothing fatal is going to happen. Nobody is going to die if some issues are there, right? Or if there is some delay in the streaming, right? An audio video playback system is another example for soft real time. So no potential damage arises if a sample comes late by a fraction of a second for playback. Like if you're watching a live cricket match or something, if there is a little delay, nothing fatal is going to happen, right? So these are all examples of soft real time, which happens in real time, but a little delay is acceptable. Okay, so that's about hard real time and soft real time. So next very important topic we have is tasks, processes, and threads. Okay, so what do you mean by a task? The term task refers to something that needs to be done. Okay, suppose you are given an assignment to do, that is a task. If you are told to present a seminar, that is a task, right? So what I'm doing, I'm taking class, that is a task that I'm doing, right? Something that needs to be done, and that is called a task. In the context of OS, an operating system, task is defined as the program in execution. Program in execution is called a task. Okay, so and the related information maintained by the operating system for the program. So all this, that is combinedly called task. So task is also known as job. In some books, they mention job. A program or part of it in execution is also called a process. So there are three terms: task, job, and process. They all refer to the same thing. Okay, a program in execution, that is a task. We can call it a job or a process. In some authors call it task, some authors call it job, and some authors call it a process. So when I say a process, it also means a task or a job. Okay, and we can use it interchangeably. So a process, as we have said, it is a program in execution, a program or part of a program in execution. So a process is also known as an instance of a program in execution. That means one program can be executed multiple times simultaneously. So one instance of it is called one process. So if the same program is running multiple times, there are multiple instances of the same program. So they are different processes. For example, if you have a software installed in your PC, you can use it multiple times. For example, I will give an example of this PowerPoint software. So this PowerPoint software, so at a time you can open multiple instances of this. That means you can open multiple PowerPoint files. So each one is a different process, right? But the program is the same. The program is Microsoft PowerPoint, but each time you open different file, different instances of the same program is created, and each of them is a different process. Okay, a process requires various system resources like CPU for executing the process, memory for storing the code corresponding to the process and associated variables, and IO devices for information exchange. So the process requires CPU for execution, memory to store some things, and IO devices for exchange of information. So a process is normally sequential in execution. Okay, the structure of a process, the concept of a process, it leads to concurrent execution of tasks. That means the tasks, they can be executed simultaneously, and thereby the effective or efficient utilization of the CPU and other system resources. So the concurrent execution is achieved through sharing of CPU among the processes. The CPU is shared between different processes. So that's why we can have simultaneous or concurrent execution. Process, it mimics a processor in properties and holds a set of registers. So just like a processor, it will have a set of registers, a process status, a program counter to point to the next executable instruction of the process, a stack for holding the local variables associated with the process, and the code corresponding to the process. So what you can see is a process, it's like a processor which has registers, program counter, right, a stack, code, memory, and other things. So the structure of a process can be visualized like this. So a process, it has got the stack with stack pointer, which points to the code, next executable code in the process. Then some working registers to store temporarily some data required by some operations. Status registers, which indicate the present state of the process. Then program counter, pointing towards the code memory corresponding to the process. So this is called the structure of the process. Okay. So what you see is it has got all the things that is required by a processor. So a process which inherits all the properties of the CPU can be considered as a virtual processor. So it is like a virtual processor, awaiting its turn to have its properties switched into the physical processor. So when that particular process is scheduled, so it will switch to the physical processor. Okay. So when the process gets its turn, its registers and the program counter register becomes mapped to the physical registers of the CPU. Right. So all these registers and the program counter, they will be mapped to the physical registers of the actual processor, that is CPU. So from a memory point of view, the memory occupied by the process, it can be divided into three parts, just like we have memory segmentation in a normal processor, right? That is code memory, data memory, and stack memory. So code memory, data memory. Code memory, it contains the program code corresponding to the process. Data memory holds all the global data for the process. And the stack memory, it holds all temporary data. So temporarily you'll be putting some things into the stack and popping out from the stack. So that is called the stack memory. As you know, the stack memory, it grows downwards, right? While putting the data on the stack pointer will be decremented first, and then the data is put into the stack. So data memory, the stack memory, it grows downwards, whereas the data memory, it grows upwards. So as and when you put the data, it will be put into the higher addresses, upper addresses, right? So this is the structure of a process with all these registers and fields. And this is the memory organization of a process. Just like a processor, we have three parts: code memory, data memory, and stack. So next we have a very important thing, that is process states and state transition. So what do you mean by a state of the process? So the process, it traverses through a series of states during its transition from a newly created state to the terminated state. So once a new process is created, it will be in the created state, that is newly created state. So when it is completed, it will come to the terminated state. The cycle through which a process changes its state from newly created to execution completed, that is known as process life cycle. Process life cycle means from its birth till death. Here birth means the creation of the process. The death is when the execution gets completed. That is called the life cycle of the process. The various states through which a process traverses through during a process life cycle, that indicates the current status of the process with respect to time. And it also provides information on what it is allowed to do next. Okay. So the transition or the change of a process from one state to another, that is called state transition. State of the process indicates what it is at present, and the transition means change of state from one state to the other. That is called state transition. So this gives a clear indication of the different process states and the state transition. When a new process is created, it is in the created state, but when it is created, it will not have any memory or the CPU given to that. Once memory is allocated to that, it will come to the ready state. Once it is given memory, once incepted into memory, it will go to the ready state. So it will wait for execution when it is in ready state. Once CPU it becomes available for that, it will be scheduled. It will be scheduled. Once it is scheduled, the process, ready process, becomes a running process. Once it is scheduled for execution, it will enter the running state. So once it is in running state, there might be many things which happen. Okay. So in case of an interrupt that has occurred, okay, if an interrupt has occurred, it will go back to ready state because the CPU will get busy in handling the interrupt. So it will go to the ready state. Or if it is preempted in between, preemption will occur, preemption in the sense before completion of the process, if the CPU allocated to it is deallocated. That is called preemption. So that means the CPU will be allocated to some other process. So in case of preemptive scheduling, multiple processes will be running at a time, and each of the process will be allocated particular time on the CPU based on some scheduling technique, right? So if at all it is preempted before completion, again it will go back to the ready state, right? If the execution gets completed, it will go to the completed state or terminated state. Okay. Then suppose a process, it might require some shared resource in the sense the resources which are shared among different processes. And if that resource is not available, or if it is taken by some other process, at that time it will be waiting and it will go to the blocked state. Okay. Or if it is waiting for an IO operation for some input from the keyboard, or or it will be waiting for a display unit, right? Or if it is waiting for any general IO, it will go to the blocked state. From running state, it will go to blocked state. Once it is blocked, it will be waiting for IO or shared resource. If that IO operation is completed, again it will go to the ready state. Or if that shared resource which it was waiting for, if it is available now and it is acquired, then again it will go to the ready state, right? So again from the ready state, once the CPU becomes available, it will be scheduled and again it will go to the running state. So these are the different states: created state, ready state, running state, locked state, and completed state. Okay. And yeah, these arrow marks indicate the state transition from one state to the other. Yeah, the state at which a process is being created is referred as created state in the beginning. So this OS recognizes a process in the created state, but no resources are allocated to the process. Okay, in the initial stages, created state. The state where a process is incepted into memory and awaiting the processor time for execution is known as ready state. Next stage, that is ready state. In the ready state, the process is replaced in the ready list queue. The process is placed in the ready list queue maintained by the OS. There will be a queue where whenever the processes become ready, they'll be put on the queue. Then based on some scheduling technique, one of these processes in the ready queue will be scheduled. Okay. So the state where in the source code instructions are corresponding, source code instructions corresponding to the process is being executed is called running state. When the process is scheduled, it will enter the running state. So it is the state at which the process execution happens. From running, it can go to block state sometimes or waiting state. Here a running process is temporarily suspended from execution and does not have immediate access to resources. A block state might be invoked by various conditions, like the process enters a wait state for an event to occur, like some input from the keyboard, like if it wants some IO operation, or it may be waiting for getting access to a shared resource, right? So we have seen both the cases here. It will enter that block state or waiting state. One more thing is not mentioned here, that is, if at all there is an interrupt or if it is preempted, it will again go back to the ready state. At the end, if the process completes its execution, it will go to the completed state. Okay. When the process completes its execution, it will go to the completed state. So these are the different states and state transition. This, it's an important question from the point of view of examination. Can be asked this question for 5 to 6 months. Next part we have is the process management. This part we have already seen when we have seen the OS architecture. Here again, with respect to real-time operating systems, process management in brief, these are the things which happen in process management. The creation of a process, setting up the memory space for the process, right? Then loading the process's code into the memory space. Once the memory space is set up, loading the process code into that memory space, then allocating the system resources, then setting up a PCB or process control block for the process, then process termination or deletion. So these are the things which are involved in the process management. Okay, so that's about the tasks and processes. In the next session, we will deal with threads, right? So we will end the session for today.